So in this talk, I will be talking about the development and validation of a machine learning ensemble algorithm for risk stratification of uncontrolled diabetes in FQHC patients. Very full title. So let's just take a quick note. Does anybody in your circle of friends and families having diabetes? Raise your hand if you do. Okay, let's make this a relevant topic for you. That's great. Um, and I don't know if people know about FQHC, Federal Qualified Health Centers. Those are the safety net health centers serving low-income population. In this population, diabetes is the most common clinical conditions these patients have, and they affect their quality of life, affect their mortality. So, and also it's very costly for the healthcare system to take care of patients with uncontrolled diabetes because they will turn up in urgent care, in emergency room, in hospital. That is both costly and it's bad for patient outcomes. So the FQHC working with us want to know how do they identify uncontrolled diabetes. All right, isn't this question simple? Just look at patient's A1C level, which is the blood concentration of the blood sugar concentration as a clinical measure. Isn't that sufficient? I guess it's not. There are several challenges of doing that, identify uncontrolled diabetes. So we're going to review this problem in this talk. The research team, including myself, two doctoral students, one medical school student, another colleague of mine. She made the connection with FQHC, and the FQHC has their research director and their data analyst working with us on this project. So in the snapshot, we first it's addressing a problem that does not have ground truth. Diabetes, uncontrolled diabetes is a common term that we use, but there's no ground truth that who is uncontrolled. Another question is, what are some of the important features we need to include to identify patients with uncontrolled diabetes? If we are able to identify patients' risk for uncontrolled diabetes, how are those compared to clinician judgment? So we are using the validation not just by number, but by clinician's judgment. So these are the three critical things I'm presenting today. Okay, so diabetes, as many of you know, it affects about 7 to 9% of the US population. And for uncontrolled diabetes, it's a very costly and deadly conditions. For people who are low income, certainly in the FQHCs, it's more than every 1 in 3 of them have uncontrolled diabetes. So how to determine what's the ground truth for uncontrolled diabetes? There isn't. Clinical judgment will say patients who have greater than 8 or 9 will be considered uncontrolled. A1C greater 8 or 9. Okay, so there's no clear cut on which criteria to use. Also, it's uncontrolled now or it's uncontrolled historically. So the time factor in the past also needs to be considered. Patients who have historically uncontrolled are likely to have worse trajectory, but if they are currently uncontrolled, maybe they are at risk. So these are different things we need to take into account in developing the machine learning algorithms to predict uncontrolled diabetes. In considering what factors in the electronic health records are important to predict uncontrolled diabetes, that's what we have to do. Electronic health records is very comprehensive. What are some of the things we need to consider? Besides patient demographic and biomedical characteristics, there are other chronic conditions that also be an important feature to predict their uncontrolled diabetes. Additionally, patients how they seek care or not seeking care is another important factor. They are missing from their medical appointments. It's not by random. There's some indications. Those factors also need to be considered. So that's why we consider comprehensive information in electronic health records when we are developing these prediction models. So our process are pretty much these 5 simple steps. Not simple, but it's a lot of months of effort. First, to determine how we identify the outcome of interest of uncontrolled diabetes, and then identify features, including medical, demographic, clinical, other health conditions, health utilizations in our models, and selection of the features. and then build this predictive models. Different approaches are used, including regression-based, machine learning algorithms, classification tree, and structured supported vector machine SVM methods. So all these methods were analyzed and compared for their predictability of the outcomes. And lastly, and the fourth step is select models for inclusion, which one works well and can provide information for us to get to the fifth step, identify people at their risk level. So this is the results of the model selections, which we found the regression-based models are both performing better and also more interpretable for our clinicians. And we identified that we need to consider their history as well as their current conditions. And training the model using more discrete category, just 2 categories, are better than more identification. So this is the risk factors we identified based on the ensemble of the models. So we found 3 models work well. If the 3 models agree with each other, we consider these patients at the 2 ends of risk factor. If they agree that patients are uncontrolled, we say this higher risk level. If they agree patients are controlled, they are lowest risk. Anywhere in between is using the information currently uncontrolled would be slightly higher risk than history uncontrolled. So we identify patients with these 5 levels of risk. Then we need to control with physician. So they serve as our validation of how useful these models are. So we compare with physician get told by, first of all, having physicians looking at patients' electronic health records. First, just looking at the predictive features, so they make a determination of patient risk level. And then they can also look at the comprehensive records as a second phase. So we then compare their iterated reliability among the physician gets told. And we found physician and our algorithms are pretty consistent in determining patient risk level. So which is the sign? That means this model clinically it's validating physicians' determination. So this can help physicians in determining patients' risk level. So we found out approximately 25% of patients at highest risk that clinicians should pay more attention to. And that these methods could be useful in 3 ways. One is the clinical decision. The clinical algorithm can help to determine how they are performing as a clinician, so they can do population-based management. Second is they can identify patients at high risk to make more clinical intervention with these patients. And lastly, if more on the research side, these methods could be applied to other conditions or other applications. So that's all.
Thank you.